Hi, I'm Ian Weiner, Certified Financial Planner. I'm one of the co-founders of Generations Wealth Partners. In this video, I want to give you a case study of a way that we do some tax planning, particularly Roth conversions, with a couple that we worked with. Now, I've changed their names, of course, but I want to show you the way that our software works, some of the things that they were thinking about as we began to have this conversation, and some of the areas that we were able to help them with. So let's go ahead and jump right in. A lot of the initial conversation happens in a software that we use called Retirement Analyzer. And we use other software, but I like this one because it's easy for clients to understand and for them to see the different mechanics at play here. And so I'm going to take you to the initial scenario here. I'm going to explain how the software works, a little bit about John and Mary, and walk you through what our process looked like with them. John and Mary, late 50s, wanted to retire at 65. It's pretty common for a lot of folks in that generation. And then I roughed out their Social Security benefits. They'd been earning great wages, had been saving really well. They don't have any kids. And so their legacy plan is really related to charity and passing some money on to their family. And so a couple of their priorities, they wanted to be able to continue their spending in retirement. And I think we'll show you they've saved enough to be able to do that. But they didn't want to get killed in taxes. And they wanted to make sure that they didn't have to worry about their spending. And so we'll talk through a couple of these issues. They also didn't know when they should claim Social Security. So I'm going to show you a little bit of a before and after. And I'm actually going to walk through live with you how sometimes we do some of this planning with our clients live. And so what we have is their initial plan was to take Social Security at their full retirement age, which was 67 based on their birthdays, okay? And so what we have is we've got their full retirement age benefit in each of their columns. So John's was $3,500 at his full retirement age. Mary made a little bit more money for a few years, and so hers is $3,800. Now, I've just changed these numbers and kind of made them up here, but the idea is that we can play with different scenarios. Most of the folks that we talk to, their plan to claim Social Security, either based on the advice of their old advisor or just what they've read and they think makes sense, is to take it at their full retirement age. So we're going to save that for both John and Mary right now. Now, they don't have pensions, and we're giving them a 2.75% cost of living adjustment. We're going to assume that for the life of their plan. And here's where we get that. That's the 10-year average. Now, some might argue, okay, why don't we use the 50-year average? That's a little bit higher. My bias in planning, the way that I think about planning, is that I would rather be conservative on things like cost of living adjustments and rates of return, and a little bit more aggressive on things like inflation and overestimating spending. This is one way that we use to stress test their plan. So we'll go ahead here a little bit, and they live in Texas, so we're not worried about state tax. They don't have a pension, so we'll keep going. So this is their current plan. I always save everything, but we'll keep going. This is their emergency fund. This is a checking account, but we'll call that an emergency fund. And so what we have here on this next tab, these are their assets. Okay, this may look like similar to your asset picture. I've consolidated a few accounts just for simplicity's sake. So they have an emergency fund, $125,000, just in case they need anything. John has a company 401k. He manages that money. It's in the market, and it's valued at about $1.35 million right now. Here's his Roth. You can see those. And so what's kind of cool about the software is if this was a different type of account, the computer will help us do some taxes. Now, John and Mary are both contributing to his 401k, her 403b, respectively. They also have a home. It's worth about $650. We'll add a liability for that a little bit later. And John does have an HSA that he contributes a little bit to, and he plans to keep that invested if they need healthcare, if they need money to pay for healthcare expenses later on. They don't have any annuities. The software will handle that. Sometimes we see clients with those. But what I want to show you here is what we're assuming for rates of return. we're assuming that the emergency fund is going to average about 2%. I think this is actually a little generous, but we're going to be fair because cash is yielding a little bit higher right now. And for money that's in the market, under this current scenario, we're assuming that they're going to make about 7%. Now, this is a simple arithmetic average, okay? So what we're assuming is that there's going to be some years that are higher, some years that are lower. The point of this software is not to do a stress test of the portfolio. We do that in another software, which I'll show you later. But what this is going to say is, based on their portfolio, based on projected rates of return for their assets, we find this to be a comfortable average rate of return. And I think based on their portfolio, it's not unreasonable. Now, yours may be a little bit higher, a little bit lower based on your risk tolerance and the assets that you hold. We can do those adjustments, okay? Now, I will argue in favor of being a little more conservative with this, because the point of planning like this is to stress test. You know, if you make 9% a year on average, okay, well, you'll have more money to spend. Now, your taxes may be higher, so that creates a different problem there. But this is a conservative way to approach this. We're going to assume their home's going to appreciate at about 3%. John's HSA is invested, so it's going to grow a little bit. And then when they have forced RMDs, they're going to take that money that they're not spending, and they're going to reinvest that. Most likely, with a lot of our clients, this is what ends up happening, okay? And so we get a weighted average for their portfolio, 6.8%. It's really not unreasonable, okay? We can look at some of these little pieces as well, but we won't dive too well into this. For this scenario, I didn't do a risk assessment, but right now the bulk of their money, is in the market. Some folks maybe want to have, a little bit more money in cash or in shorter term treasury, something that's not as volatile as the market, so that they can weather a downturn. We'll base that on the portfolio, your unique situation, and this is just one way to express their portfolio composition, a very simple way. Call it the risk donut and the tax donut. And the idea here, again, is just to be very simple so that we can take these ideas and apply action to them. Now, the tax analysis, this is where we're going to spend a little bit more time, because what we see here is that this is their current portfolio, and you get a little glimpse of their legacy. Based on their spending, they're going to leave some money when they pass away, okay? Now, we project that at age 100. It could happen sooner. We'll look at how to do the analysis. But this is the tax composition of their portfolio, okay? So the bulk of their assets, $2.3 million, is in tax qualified accounts, 401ks, 403bs, okay, or traditional IRAs would be another way to look at that. They've got some money in a non-qualified brokerage account, okay? They have a little bit of money that's in the bank. This is their emergency fund. This is 1099 interest. And they've got a little bit of their money in a Roth IRA. Now, when they came to us, they were concerned about taxes, did not want to overpay on taxes in retirement, and so this is why we're doing this tax analysis, okay? So we'll keep going. Their expenses, they spend about $14,000 a month, okay? Now, if you look at their income, he makes $12,500 a month. This is before tax. She makes $16,600 a month. They're able to spend this, okay? Now, you may spend more or less. That's okay. The point of this is not to judge their spending. It's to figure out how your spending works and can their portfolio sustain that. Now, I want you to see what I did with inflation here, okay? I'm using the 110-year average for inflation. Now, a few minutes ago, the reason we do that, I explained, is that I want to be conservative with rates of return and a little bit more aggressive with inflation, because if we're going to have a problem at some point in the plan, I want to find that out now, not 20 years in the future, okay? So we're going to overestimate inflation, and I'd like to err on that side. The thing that let's say they owe $200,000 on the house. Mortgage. And we'll say that they're going to pay that off in 15 years. That's fine. Really doesn't matter for the sake of this. We can do some deep dives into their cash flow every month. That's something we can do with the software. But let's jump ahead here. What's the bottom line here? The bottom line, based on these assumptions, John and Mary are going to be fine. Okay, I'm not worried about them running out of money, and this is the case with a lot of our clients. Okay, they have saved well, and as a function of their frugality, they're going to have more money when they retire. than they maybe need. This creates a host of other problems, which is one of the areas that we really focus our work on. Now, don't worry, if you're in a different situation, I will create another video that talks about some other ideas if you're still saving, you haven't quite hit that retirement number yet. But this video is also for the folks who, maybe you're a little bit younger and you have a certain number in mind. We'll talk through some of the challenges and pitfalls of that as we go. And so what the software does, and part of the reason that I like this software, is it's simple to understand and it's very line by line. There's pros and cons of cash flow based and goal based planning. One of the pros of cash flow based planning is that it's easy to understand. They don't have pension income, you can see in that column, and their Social Security income won't start until they're both 67, okay? And so for a couple of years, they don't have any income coming in, and their expenses are adjusted for inflation. And so what's actually happening, which is what happens in real life in your portfolio, is that they're having to sell some of their assets to be able to create income to cover their expenses. This is normal. This is what happens in real life. And that's what I like about this software. This mimics real life and it's easy to understand. Now, this column here, this is what percentage they're withdrawing. This is one of the most important columns. For folks who haven't oversaved, this is what we pay really close attention to. And we can talk about that a little bit more in another video. And so what happens over time, their expenses are increasing. You can see the effects of inflation here. And their income is also increasing with Social Security. Okay? And so the amount that they're having to pull from their assets to cover their expenses is going up a little bit as well. Now, you might be saying, Ian, are they really going to spend $30,000 a month at age 80? Spending in retirement isn't always a straight line up, okay? I like one of the analogies that we like is kind of the retirement smile, okay? You tend to spend a little bit more at the front end and a little bit more at the back end if we're not careful and have to pay for healthcare or some of those other needs. But in the middle, that tends to go down. That's fine. We can model that if we want to. I'll show you how we can do that maybe in another video. But for the purposes of this, I want to be able to see right away, this takes a few minutes to input this. I want to be able to see right away, what do we need to focus on? This is kind of a triage conversation. What are the key things that we need to be able to focus on that you can take action on right away? In their situation, running out of money is not really a concern that we have at this point, okay? And so what we do want to look at is a couple things. One, where does the money go? If you're not going to spend it all, where's it going to go? Now, John and Mary, they don't have kids. And so they want their money to go to charities and to the rest of their family. And so that opens up a whole bunch of conversation around estate planning, legacy planning, charitable planning, and making sure that the money that they have saved and earned and are working to invest is going to go to the people, places, and organizations they care about, and do so in a way that is as tax efficient as possible. We won't talk about all of those details today, but this is one of the key conversations that we have with families like John and Mary. The other thing immediately in my mind that I go to is, what's their lifetime tax bill going to be? Now, let's look at that. So we can go to the tax tab here, and what this is doing is this is assuming a couple things, okay? But it's also going to show some projections. Now, can I be candid? The thing about software is, and the thing about planning is, the only thing we know for sure that is true is that the projections that we're looking at are wrong. Now, hang with me for just a minute. I don't want you to panic. But the reason we know that they're wrong is we don't know exactly what inflation is going to be. We don't know exactly what you're going to spend. We don't know what the rates of return your portfolio is going to get. This gives us a roadmap. This is a guide, but it's not exactly right. Okay, and so this is designed to give us insight quickly into things again that we can look at to adjust. Now, what we're projecting here in this scenario is tax rates are staying the same, adjusting a little bit for inflation, but they're staying the same. And John and Mary are going to take RMDs like many folks do when they're forced to take them. Okay, kind of the defer delay plan. This is the most common plan that we see. Now, what's great about the software is it's going to take into account things like provisional income. This is the taxation of their Social Security. We can go to any year and see how that's going to be affected, okay? We can also look at, what their taxes are going to be like any given year along their plan. And we're planning to age 100. Now, if they pass sooner, great. that happens. But what we want to see is, will the plan be sustained that long? You'd be surprised. We have a lot of clients that are approaching that. And we can look at what their brackets are going to be over time and how that changes. But what we really want to look at here is, what is their cumulative tax? So let's say they pass away in 2062. Okay, their total tax, state, federal, well, they're in Texas, so they're not paying state tax. Federal tax, and then tax on their Social Security that's included in that, little over $3.8 million, okay? Now, you might be saying, great, they have plenty of money, fine. But to me, this is an area of opportunity. Now, what we didn't look at is, what if taxes go up? At the time of this recording, we're still expecting I'll just go back to this scenario so that we can see it all together here. So one way that we can model things is tax increase 2026. We can just create new scenarios really fast, which is great. So everything's the same in this scenario. We can model different ideas, right, and see how those things are affected. Now, this software is not perfect at the way it models tax increases, but the way that we do it is really, really close to reality, and I think it's actually conservative. So at the time of this recording, currently, we're still expecting the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the so-called Trump tax laws, to sunset at the end of 2025, beginning 2026. Okay, and so what that means is, we're going to revert back to the 2017 tax rules. We expect they'll be adjusted for inflation. And so what that translates to in the software is, that translates in most, on average, to about a 25% increase. And if you really want to check me on this, you can look at what these end up being, 12, 15, 27. It ends up being pretty close, okay? Where the software is imperfect is, I don't have the ability to adjust the actual brackets. So both the effective rate of taxes will go up, and the brackets will shrink in 2026, okay? And so that's what we have to model. So there we go. Now let's look at what that does to their lifetime tax situation. That increases their taxes, I said at 62 earlier, by about $1 million right there over their lifetime. Now, Ian, what is that? What's causing that to happen? Well, let's go into their 80s. Let's say 83. This is a great age where people really start to pay attention to this. So we can go into any given year and we can look at, what their Social Security income looks like, what their expenses are, where their money comes from. We can do really deep analysis on this. But this, to me, is the most powerful section in the entire software. We can see what their gross income is going to be. You're going, wow, did they spend that all? Well, based on inflation, they might. We can also see, what portion is going to be provisional income, or the amount that is subject to tax on their Social Security. But what we really want to look at here is, what's the RMD required? So based on their saving, based on their spending, all of the inputs that we've put in here, the RMD that would be required is a little over $300,000 that year. Okay. Now they need $75,000 to live. And so the difference, the $225,416 that they're required to take out because their RMDs, required minimum distributions, result in a forced tax of almost $60,000. Okay, so they're going to reinvest this money and keep that going. Okay, so each year that their IRA balance grows, so does their forced taxes. Okay, so as that compounds, as their accounts grow, because they're not spending the money, look at that very top one there, forced RMD proceeds. They've been carrying forward that balance for years at this point. Okay, and so they have a tax problem that needs to be addressed. Now, some folks don't care. They go, look, as long as we have enough money, I don't care how much we pay in taxes. That doesn't tend to be most of our clients, I have to tell you. Most of the time, folks really would rather reinvest that money in their retirement, spend more, gift it to their family, create a legacy, or gift it to charity, and maybe a combination of the two. If we're able to save money on taxes, why wouldn't we consider that? So I'm going to show you just one piece here, high level, of how we begin to have this conversation, okay? So when we're having a conversation, when we have our clients' actual numbers in here, this is how we begin to have this conversation with them. And there's a lot more analysis that happens behind the scenes. But again, we want to use this to be able to hone in on what are key ideas that we want we want to evaluate further and explore and even implement, and this helps us to do that. Okay, and so what this shows is this is a high-level way for us to look at doing Roth conversions, okay? Paying the tax on the 401k or the IRA, converting it to a Roth for 401k or IRA, and then that money grows tax-free from then on, okay? As long as we play by the rules. And so this is showing what our current portfolio is and what the makeup of the portfolio would be when they pass away, in this case at age 100. Okay. Now, of course, we can go back and look at some different options. But what you notice here is that even at age 100, still $2.5 million is going to be in an IRA when it goes to, whether it's the nieces and nephews or the charity. Now, if that goes to charity, not as big of a deal. Okay. But if it does go to individuals or go through a trust, that money is taxable, and that's going to be taxed at their highest marginal bracket. So this number, this projected lifetime tax, it's actually a little bit low because they still have to pay tax on this $2.56 million, okay? And so what we can do is we can really quickly say, hey, what if we did some Roth conversions, okay? And I'm doing this brutally quick just for the sake of the conversation, but what if we just converted, as much as we could over 7 years? We went from a projected top tax bracket, leaving their plan alone, of 43.75%, so top tax bracket, okay? Now, I understand that's not the exact top tax bracket. We just had to make that adjustment. To the projected top rate being 27%. Huge difference, okay? Almost a 20% difference in their top marginal bracket. That's probably about a 10% difference in their effective rate. And look, their lifetime tax went from $5.5 million to 2.9. Now, again, I did this in 5 seconds. We're going to actually do much deeper analysis, figure out where we're going to pay the tax from, what exact assets we're going to convert. But this tells me right away that it's about a $2.5 million idea if we can save some money on taxes over their lifetime. Okay, and so we have a significant impact right away. Let's explore that idea further. That's an idea that we need to explore further, and we can look at in a really as much detail as we want to go to. Where is that tax coming from? What's that cumulative number there? Now, what's cool is, what if we make more money after? What if we also optimize the portfolio while we're at it and just get an extra 1% after? Look at the difference in their legacy, the amount that they're able to give to their family or to the charitable organizations that they care about. So just optimizing 1% could be a really huge opportunity. And so, look, there's a lot that we covered in this. We can't solve all the world's problems today, but I wanted to show you just a quick overview of one of the planning softwares that we use and the way that we talked about this with John and Mary and the way that I explained how this works with their unique situation. And so if that's something that you want to explore a little bit more, we can create one of these scenarios for you, show you with your numbers what this would look like and whether or not that may be valuable to you. So appreciate you taking some time. Looking forward to chatting soon.